Testing, testing. You hear me now? Do you hear this?
Bane, you're a piece of work. You know that, right? Hey, Larry coming out tonight?
I'm not going tonight.
You're not?
No. Uh-uh.
Fun?
I have too many things I got to do.
All right, all right, all
What
right.
can we do?
Okay, the
that?
December
Like,
meeting.
it's really
You
good
get him
for you.
organized for that.
Okay.
Okay, second Monday.
Amazing.
Larry Bane.
Two spots when you
Because we
travel.
went, yes, we
Yeah.
spent like 4 days in one and 4 days in the other one.
Nice.
And just wonderful.
Like live there and move there.
Boy, this is
No,
fort.
you know what? I love to travel. We love
Fort.
Really?
Right.
Benign agenda, man.
But you know what? There's nothing. And the
Pretty benign.
See.
No, I know the one, but
I mean, Macron was making fun of Trump about.
Hey,
hey. Eric, I got to speak to you on a matter when you're done with the mayor here.
Right.
Hey, Erica. Hey,
And all that, which I love that. I love that when I'm there. But you really chastise the
Right.
United States about
Fort.
nationalism.
And they're
when you
still
guys-
doing it? And they're doing it over there?
No, the funny thing is,
I just sent it to you.
super unpopular.
I got it
He's
already.
socialist.
Oh, you redid the whole
I did
thing?
the whole thing.
Okay, so now I can go.
Yes.
In a capitalist government,
It's this one.
the wealthy
Yeah,
pay
but
more
this is the
taxes
whole
than a lot
No,
of
no,
agenda.
no. It's just
others
one
don't pay
one
any.
of
Well, there,
the.
So that's the new agenda.
That's
That's
the new one.
Access.
40%, don't pay taxes.
No, federal.
Billy,
federal
would you
tax
have the
they don't
wrong
pay.
agenda?
no. All right, that's it.
Yes, and so now you have your bookmarks.
Okay.
And then you can click on, and it'll take you right to
Okay.
the. Okay.
Erica.
Funny, I'm going.
That must have been scary for you, Americans.
You know,
No.
because it was.
Zoraida Fort.
You know what
Tell
they
me,
always
so
say
they know what to
about
do.
confidence and trouble.
Your husband is Jewish,
It
right?
starts with office supplies.
Boy,
I
you're
know,
something.
right?
You've heard that
I mean,
before.
like,
No, you've heard that before. Right?
Right, right. I thought he was Jewish for some reason. Well, he teaches
just
in,
cracked up when I
he
saw
used
it.
to teach in Israel.
No, he goes to Israel. He goes to
Zoraida
different
Fort.
places, you
Whose
know,
mother is it?
for sacrifice.
Right.
I didn't know that.
But he goes to Israel every year with
I know
another
it was
professor
Fort
who is
is your wife.
Israeli, and they take they go there for like a week
Oh,
and
it takes
stuff.
an award to get your ass here. Huh?
Tom,
An award.
Hey,
no, this
Happy
is Mara.
Thanksgiving.
he said
Did you have a good
Oh,
one? Did you have a good one?
Maria was.
Listen, he's a little gone
No,
sometimes,
Maria
but
was
he's not
standing
that
right
bad.
next to me when I shook your hand.
Like Mara.
No, you were right next to me when when he shook my hand, so I got confused.
Sweetheart, how are you?
No,
You move
not this
fast.
one,
I think
this
is what
one.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but you?
Yes, very good.
We'll have to
Oh,
Amazon
really?
sometime.
Maria moves fast.
Yeah. My
Well, we'll
oldest daughter
see.
stayed
But,
over.
you know, we'll see.
Oh,
I've been doing this enough where
Hey,
you don't
the
know.
I
mayor wants
muscled
to know
it
why
through
you guys
after
got new
spring.
chairs and we don't get
Much
them.
to Claire's dismay, but never mind. We got home.
The mayor's
I know, but it's all
How
about them Irish?
to
really
the
angry
other
about
people,
that.
It's all about
Tommy.
Yes, he is.
They ran the
Ask
table.
and how I wanted it to go.
They ran
I
the
wanted it
table.
just like it did the
First,
lady.
he knows. But I was complaining to
I was
Bob.
I couldn't believe. You know the game I'm talking
Kinda,
about.
kinda.
Your guys.
Complaining to Bob.
Too
couldn't
fast.
believe
And then,
Too
we
fast.
quiet down. Bob's like, nah, I look like
Couldn't
crap.
freaking
I know, but
believe it.
it's to you.
He says, what?
You'll see how it plays.
I'm not the only
You
one.
understand?
Tom, right?
First one.
Who was that college team that scored 92 points yesterday?
Wait, I shoot.
Yes, you can Google it. There was a Division One. Yes, 9-2. I think that could be the most points I've ever heard of. I don't know. Hi, congrats. Tommy, I have no idea, but
Wait, did that? Did
I mean,
that,
I was scared if you could see or not. So that's your mother. That's your mother. That isn't the this. Yeah, but who's getting the award for the yard? Oh, okay.
not him. Billy, not him.
I thought you were talking about the lady in blue.
The lady in blue. Lady in red. No red in. Sorry.
Can't do that, right?
Bill, you turn these on. I'm freaking talking to Tom, and it's being broadcast.
Terrible too.
He does not. He does not look terrible.
What is she here for?
How's the eye, more importantly?
Oh, she came to the meeting. She's
So you went up?
gone. She used to be.
I'm waiting for her to say, okay?
And the pitch.
Beginning of August.
I'm gonna blow that first name. I don't care how you look at it. I'm not gonna say it right.
No, we
Oneida.
discussed this earlier. No need to
So
bring
that-
it up again.
Fort.
The mayor's got, or actually the other side.
What do you want to sign up
Oh.
for? Which one?
Against that defense.
Mhm.
What?
Did you see?
Sign
Willie,
here.
did you see the team? I was just telling Tommy. He didn't see it.
Call
either.
the roll,
So-
please.
College team scored 92 points.
Mayor Bain,
I'm here.
Vice Mayor Petrolanda,
Here.
Councilman Best,
Aye.
Councilwoman Mitchell,
Here.
Councilwoman Zapata.
Here.
Okay, please stand for invocation. Councilwoman Mitchell. And after invocation, we'd like to say a short prayer, silence for Gail Sirota from the law firm that our attorney represents and works with, who had a boating accident this weekend and lost her life. So after prayer, we'll take to say a little silent meditation.
Oh, Heavenly Father, as we near the end of November, we're reminded that this is the month to be thankful and grateful. Thankful of our veterans, thankful for our family, for our blessings, for our friends, for our beautiful city. We ask for your guidance here tonight to us in the council and to our residents and our city staff to always keep the best interest of our beautiful city at heart. Amen.
Amen. And please, a moment of silence, please, for Gail Sirota. Thank you. Okay. Oh, well,
Mary's here to keep you in line.
Thank you, Mary. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a presentation.
Oh yeah. Sat down with
Zoraida Ford, meet me up here, please. Come here. Come here, right next to me, right next to me. We have a certificate of recognition presented to Zoraida Ford. I know how they say the fort. It's the first part. 1520 Lake Drive, for her home being designated the Yard of the Month on this December 2018, the 26th day. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. Here, I'll hold that while you have your speech.
Okay, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Good evening. My name is Zoraida Ford. I have lived here for many years. My kids went to Springview Elementary and they learned to swim at the recreation center. So I want to thank Eric Ritchie and Mayor Bain, the City Council, for this lovely recognition of my landscape yard. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Take a picture of. Come on, take a picture. Wait a minute.
Very good.
You want to take a picture with the family?
Yeah, have the granddaughters come on.
Come on.
Look, that one's a teacher.
Everybody.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I do.
Yeah, yeah.
Try to look at it.
I'm sure you do. Ah.
It's like a student. Échate.
Merry Christmas to all.
Thank you.
How many?
Ha!
Good night.
Good night.
She says you gave her more kisses than anybody else. He's
I'm
just talking.
jealous.
He's
That's
talking.
Get a kiss. What can I say? We have Vincent to talk in open forum. Vincent, look at Bedley.
Bryce is doing a.
Why are we so? Did we get a new sound system? Oh,
We got new chairs, Mayor.
No, 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 it's not.
good.
Good evening.
Just stand. Yeah, wait for me.
My name is Vincent Medell, 330 Morningside Drive, Miami Springs, Florida. My objective this evening is to propose and to ask the City Council to budget for new tennis courts in our beautiful city. We have this City Council and the community in the past has done tremendous work and very nice, real recreational area center, a brand new pool. We have bike path, walk path, dog parks, and everything else that has been budgeted and done with. And I think it's time for us to start working on a budget for the beautiful tennis courts. There's a lot of enthusiasm here in the community, and I propose. I'm not a politician, so I'm just here as a person that wants to kind of like propose an idea to see if we can make it happen. If you need a committee, I'll be happy to be part of it and take the lead. But that is my objective this evening, to see if we can get this ball rolling on new tennis courts. I call this city a boutique city. Miami Springs is a very nice city, and we have a lot of beautiful things here, thanks to you all, and the community. But we really need to get tennis courts, preferably over there at the Golf and Country Club, which I think would be really neat for overall experience. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Is there one more that signed up, or that last signed up?
Is that for open forum? No.
Let me see.
Item 11.
Yeah.
There's several things on
Okay, we go. Thank you for coming. We go to that concludes open forum. We go to 6A, November 5th, 2018, regular council meeting. Entertain a motion.
Through the chair, motion to move.
Second.
Call the vote.
Vice Mayor Petrolanda,
Yes.
Councilman Best,
Aye.
Councilwoman Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilwoman Zapata,
Yes.
Mayor Bain.
Yes, we go. No reports from boards and commissions. Public hearings none. We have consent agenda, funded or budgeted. Does anyone pull any of the consent agenda items off for discussion? Okay, read them off, sir.
This is a recommendation by the Police Department that council approve an expenditure to Loxia Technologies as a sole source provider in the amount of $6,184.96 for new IT infrastructure, server, software, firewall, and licensing, as funds were approved in the fiscal year 18-19 budget pursuant to Section 3111 E6C of the City Code. Item 9B, recommendation by the Police Department that council approve an expenditure to Axon Enterprise, Inc. as a sole source provider in the amount of $10,200 for 300 15-foot smart cartridges for X2 taser training, as funds were approved in the fiscal year 18-19 budget pursuant to Section 3111 E6C of the City Code. Item 9C, recommendation by the Police Department that council approve an expenditure in the amount of $59,330 to Miami-Dade County ITD Department, the lowest responsible quote after obtaining 3 written quotes, which are attached, for 17 mobile radios, as funds were approved in the fiscal year 18-19 budget pursuant to 3111 C2 of the City Code. Item 9D, recommendation by the Gulf that council approve an increase to the city's current open purchase order with U.S. Foods, Inc., utilizing an agreement with the Gulf Now's Premier Reach program in an amount not to exceed $10,000 for food and beverage supplies for the Legends Bar and Grill restaurant located inside the Miami Springs Golf and Country Club, as funds were budgeted in the fiscal year 18-19 budget pursuant to section 3111 F511C of the City Code.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve consent
Second.
agenda items 9A through D.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call a vote, please.
Vice Mayor Petralano?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Zapata?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Yes. 10A, naming of the Tiki Hut boat ramp area.
Yes, Mayor and Council. During the meeting of November 5th, 2018, Council approved adding to the boat ramp sign an additional line thanking Miami Springs BSA Troop 334. After some discussions I had with Mayor Bain and Councilwoman Mitchell regarding some calls they received from other Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops in the city who felt they had also contributed to the ramp in the past and should also be recognized. We have come up with some options for the language to be used in the sign. Option 1, in gratitude to our Miami Springs Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts with special thanks to BSA Troop 334. Or option 2, in gratitude to our Miami Springs Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts.
I mean, I'd
That's-
rather call it Peacock Ramp, but
No,
you
well,
know,
I
you
know
guys
that you
can
said
do
that you said that a while back, but
whatever's
yeah, I think either
convenient.
one. I think either one is fine. And I understand where these other troops are coming from and dens and whatever, because they are responsible as well for some of the activities that go on there. So I'm not opposed, and I just thank the administration for looking into that, because that was one of my things at the last meeting, that I thought that the Boy Scouts for sure should be recognized. I have no problem with the Girl Scouts either. I mean, it's all part of.
Well, do you want 1 or 2?
Two.
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 I'm fine with 2.
Two.
2's fine.
I'll have a motion. Give me a motion.
Motion to move, sir.
Move
Second.
1 or 2?
2.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Call the vote.
Vice Mayor Petralano?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Zapata?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Yes.
Thanks, Willie.
Mayor, before we move on to 11A, could we move up 11E so Lazaro can go home after a long day?
Who's Lazaro?
He's back there.
Way back in the back,
I guess so.
the bleachers.
Okay, we're going to recommendation of Public Works.
Yeah.
This is a recommendation by Public Works that council authorize the issuance and/or execution of a purchase order to Metro Express, Inc., utilizing Miami-Dade County Contract Award under request for price quote RPQ 2017-0179, MCC 7360 plan, which is attached, an amount not to exceed $66,691.50 for renovations of the Westward Drive path from the Glen Curtis Circle to Esplanade Drive utilizing CITT funds. At the November 5th, 2018 meeting, Mayor Billy Bain requested the council consider allowing staff to obtain a quote, a cost for renovating the Westward Drive path from Glen Curtis to Esplanade Drive by removing the uneven brick pavers that currently exist and concreting the path to match the new path from Flamingo Circle to Hammond Drive. Also, the recommendation was to eliminate the concrete curbs mid-block and only allow the ramps at either end of each of the 4 blocks. Staff obtained a quote from Metro Express piggybacking off of the Miami-Dade County contract under request for price quote for removing the brick pavers and mid-block curbing and redesign the ramps and replace the path with non-colored concrete at the cost of $66,691.50. Should council wish to consider having colored concrete to match the new path, the cost would be an additional $39,665 for a total of $106,356.50.
Okay. I think that since it's from the CITT situation, I would recommend that I don't think we should spend the extra money for the color. But
I was wondering where you're going there.
yeah, but the 66 and now the CITT,
Yeah, no,
it's something that
Mayor, I couldn't agree with you
we've
more.
been having problems with people walking on there in situations, so it's here. So I'll entertain
Mayor,
a
if
motion.
I may?
Sure.
May I don't know if we have to go to the motion first, or I'd like to discuss.
Well, I'd like to have a motion to.
You got a motion, sir, right here.
To approve?
Motion to move.
Do I get a second?
For the non-call, the
Yeah, for the 66.
standard, 6-6, yeah.
Do I get a second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion.
Okay, thank you. I have some, if you could pass those out, please. First of all, Mayor, I wanted to thank you for bringing this up, for this proposal up at the last meeting. I think it's something that definitely needs to be done to remove the mid-block ramps and to provide accessibility to the crosswalks at the corners, because right now the way the median is, it ends before, several yards before you get to either crosswalk, and we have these mid-block ramps that actually get the pedestrians out into the middle of the road. So those need to be corrected. However, I walked this area today and I took these pictures and I looked at the paver tiles. The pavers are in amazingly good condition. With, I think on the 4 or 5 blocks, I found maybe a handful, certainly less than 10 areas where the one paver might be a little bit high. But in general, from what you can see on these pictures, or if you've already walked the area, the pavers are in really good condition. Where there's 1 or 2 areas where the pavers are a little bit off, those can be quickly remedied by just, kind of pushing them back into the ground. I find that spending $66,000 to remove pavers that are in good condition is just an excess use of our CITT funds. However, what I propose is that we leave the pavers the way they are and extend the walks all the way to the curb so that they meet the, they take anyone who's walking from along there, they will take them all the way to the curbs to the crosswalks. And if you look at the last picture in the package that I gave you, you'll see that one of the big problems that we have is that at all these crosswalks, the crosswalks aren't marked. They're totally erased. So we need to address that. We need to repaint crosswalks on all these corners to go with these locations. So my suggestion is, and I would like the council to either think about it, walk the area, or give some thought. Right now, we're being charged to remove and dispose of perfectly good brick pavers, $8,000 just to remove and dispose of them. There's no reason, plus we're paying for all the extra concrete to cover 3/4 of the area that's already got pavers in it. So this would reduce the cost of the concrete or whatever they decide to extend on either side substantially, probably 1/4 of the price, I'm thinking. The other thing too is from a sustainability standpoint, it makes no sense to, get rid of materials that are in perfectly good condition and replace it with concrete. That's a drain on our resources. It also causes more greenhouse gases. It's just, in addition to the cost, it just makes no sense to get rid of something that's in such good condition. And by the way, I think these pavers were put in under Mayor John Cavalier's tenure. They're an amazing engineering feat in how good condition they are. We have a lot of sidewalks all over the city that are in much worse condition than any of these pavers. So I would like to, with the council's consent, is ask the city manager to have the company look into the possibility of what the cost would be to leave the pavers the way they are, fix the handful of them that are a little bit high, and extend the sidewalk or walkway to the curbs.
Well, at this point, I want to bring up Lazaro to address a couple of things. One of the things is we've had a number of trip and fall claims against the city for some of the uneven pavers. And second of all, I'd like Lazaro to tell us how much time their staff spends fixing these problems. That's why you see that some areas are nicer than others, but It's because of the work they have to do on a daily basis to keep some of these things up. Lazaro?
Morning, good afternoon, Lazaro Caraboa. This has been an ongoing problem for years already. We've had company come out and do it. I didn't bring the quotes in, but it's extensive. You got to remove the paver. It's not just bash them down because there's roots down there. Between the road rock, the firm road rock, and the paver, there's roots already. They're like, looks like spider web. And every time one root just pops a little, it starts the effect of popping them all up. We've had trip and falls. We had a city employee fall not too long ago. It's a little more extensive than just bashing them down. And we're going to continue with this problem. So it's going to be an ongoing battle, constant. Monitoring them when they pop up, put them back down, but it takes time because it's not just one, it's the whole area. We have to clean it and put it back down. It's not as easy as we think. And we've been going on for this for a year. I've been here 18 years, and we've been dealing with an area pops up, we got to fix it. If we can't do it because it's too big, we bring a company. And it's just been an ongoing battle. So we thought going this route would eliminate the trips and falls and other issues that we have now, people crossing in through the middle, like you were explaining.
Well, that needs to be corrected.
So.
I have a question. So when you lay the concrete there with this amount of money that would be spent, wouldn't the roots do the same thing to the concrete?
Well, the roots are surface, so right now, as they go, they're going to cut the roots, and it's going to have a thickened edge of 6 inches. So it's not just going to be a regular 4-inch sidewalk. The edges are going to be 6 inches, just like when they did the bike path. The bike path was a little deeper. So those trees are kind of established already. So the roots, if you walk today, they're a lot of surface. The ones that are deep, they're not going to bother. The tree's been there for so long, the root's not going to make a U-turn and come back up. Just the ones that are surface, that they'll continue growing. Once they hit that thickened concrete, they'll just veer off.
Lazaro, Mayor, when was the last time you worked on those pavers?
I haven't worked
or
on
not
them for
you,
a while,
the
but
city.
our maintenance guy,
our
they were
maintenance.
there
When was the last time, would you say?
3 weeks ago, and they spent a whole week there.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you for that information, because they really do look great.
Yeah, so, it was worse than what it is now. There's some areas that still need to be addressed, but the worst part where we had the trips and falls, those are the areas that you're seeing they look good.
Lazaro, another question that a council person brought up, Councilman Petrolanda, was once these pavers are removed, can they be used somewhere else?
I don't see why not.
I know.
They're not broken. They're a little rough.
My suggestion was maybe find a company that might want to buy them from us, or just give them to residents who might want it for their homes.
Yeah, they're not bad.
Perhaps I know a resident had mentioned paving, using pavers over by Papa John's, that parking area that we have on the median, to get pavers there. Not necessarily, we weren't talking about these, but that area should have pavers on it, so perhaps they could be used for that.
You're talking about the parking area that people use across in the median? We had a problem with that because the county doesn't allow it because of the drainage, of the water drainage.
Oh, okay. Even the pavers, I thought they were pervious. Maybe. I think you can use, well, we'd have to check into it, but I think as long as
the county gave us resistance several years ago in reference to that. Really, they don't want anything there. That was their bottom line, that they don't want anything there. The pavers could be used for, whether you want to donate them, give them to somebody, have the residents use it, use it somewhere else. The pavers they're not broken.
You have somewhere to keep them, to store them?
Yeah, we could always find somewhere. We put them on pallets, wrap them up and put them away. Instead of disposing of them, and that you save some money there too, if you want to go that route.
So the maintenance, if we go with this route, the maintenance would be minimal. You don't expect to
Should be no.
have,
yes.
because we have sidewalks all over the city that roots are coming up and are getting.
These trees are not that big, and I don't see anything happening with that sidewalk. Everything's not forever, but I don't think we're gonna have an issue. The trees are not that big. Like Swales have big oak trees, And that's probably the lifts that you're seeing in the breaks. And we do have a lot of sidewalks in the city that we could use some money to fix too. Let me just throw that in.
I mean,
But-
the maintenance will probably be pressure cleaning it.
Yeah, every once in a while, you know, like we do through the city downtown area that we pressure clean every couple of years. That'll probably be the biggest maintenance that we'll have, but we do that through downtown area every couple of years anyways.
So I have a question. Now, I'm looking at these pictures here. I think this is 2 blocks. These look really good.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's some areas that you're gonna walk through that are good, but now, 3 months from now, you might have a lift. And it's,
That's what
the whole 4 blocks are not lifted. You know, if you were to say, well, how much is lifted, if I was just to guess, I would say if you put it all together, maybe the equivalent of 1 block. You know, if that.
Right now.
If you were to put it together.
Right.
You know, and I'm just
Right.
putting, you know, a number out there.
And we're talking about 4 blocks.
And we have 4 blocks.
Because these are really nice pictures.
This morning, and again, I walked this morning, so I don't know how it was 3 weeks ago, but this morning it was difficult to find any pavers that, with the exception of 2 areas, any pavers that were raised.
Right.
More than, you know, say a 1/4 inch, which I think that's the spec.
Yes, but sometimes you walk by and your eye, if you're not into that field, you might walk by it and say, oh, that looks good. But in my eye, I'll walk by and say, look, you have one here, you got one there, so I could point them out if you want to walk one day. And I mean,
No, I
the whole
appreciate your
4
input
blocks
on
are
it.
not bad. Okay, this was just an option because we've had trip and falls through the years, and I guess we were trying to eliminate that.
If I may. This quote that we have, is this the only quote we have from this company, or was this
Yeah, because we're piggybacking on our county bid.
Well, I think to me, this is disturbing because they look very good and aesthetically in that area. I remember when they first went up, they're beautiful, and now we're going to replace them with just solid concrete that will require less maintenance, but it'll still be, it's just, you know, that's our little main street in front of City Hall, and I can't see spending this amount of money to do that, and people are going to fall on the grass if they walk on the grass too. I mean, those were my 2 words sometimes.
I like to walk the area because I walked a little bit and it looks just like this, but I don't want to say no tonight, but I don't want to say yes either. Because I like to walk and look for myself the areas that you're concerned with before we do spend this kind of money.
Through the chair, far be it from me to take away anything of historical value. I'm very partial to that. And Councilwoman, I totally agree with you relative to its presence. But I think we have to err on the part of practicality in this case. The amount of money that's been spent is alarming, shall we say, to maintain these. And I'd be in favor of us carting them up and storing them. And if we cut some deal to give them to the people or maintain them for a project down the road, I think that makes a heck of a lot more sense than to try to maintain this in the current condition.
Do we have the amount of money that's been spent so far?
And
To repair these?
CITT funds, yes.
So
how much
has been spent?
Oh, no, I don't have that information.
No, I don't have that right now.
Because it would make sense to know that to compare to what we're spending here.
Well, I think, Councilwoman, I think to have a supervisor of public works standing in front of us tonight telling us exactly what the problem has been is certainly enough. I mean, we could see a number, sure, but
No,
it's going to continue. It's going to
me,
continue.
exactly would be the number. I don't see exactly. I would need exactly to approve this amount.
Well, it was brought up because of the liability of the people falling.
No, I understand.
That's why I brought it. I mean, if
I
you
didn't even
don't-
mention that. I could have.
And I understand about they look good now, but the fact remains is there's a lot of maintenance, and if they miss a day and there's one popped up, somebody falls, then the city's liable for it. To me, it's here nor there. I mean, I thought the council was, we went ahead and we agreed to get a price on it. We got a price. It's a piggyback price, which probably is a better situation than others in my experience up here. But it's up to the council to go ahead and say whether they want to do it. If you don't want to do it,
Mayor,
that's fine.
Regardless of whether we switch the paver tiles to the concrete or not, there's two things that I think definitely need to be done that you brought up. One is the remove the mid block ramps. Those need to be closed off, and we need to extend the walkway to the real cross marks. So either way, that's work that has to be done, and that would have to come out of CITT funds. I think what we're talking about is the difference of whether to the pavers themselves to redo those at the same time or leave the pavers and extend the, so perhaps just delaying it enough so that the other council can look at it and decide. And maybe walking with Lazaro and you can show us, you know, like you said, the differences that we're not familiar with that you have noticed. When we've had accidents in the past, there with the paver tiles have been really dislodged?
Yes.
Or they're
Well,
minor? It's hard to...
Some have been high, yes, correct, but even a quarter inch, anybody could trip. I mean, it doesn't really have to be that dislodged. It could just be a fraction of a quarter, and, you know, if you're not paying attention, you're going to trip.
We don't have pictures in that.
So as soon as they raise up a little bit, you got to be on them.
We don't have pictures of those areas, because we have pictures of nice areas.
I do have pictures of the only two areas that I found today. There were only two in the 4 blocks of dislodged bricks. That's why
Right.
you know, I walked 4 blocks and those were the 2 that I could find, and I looked very, obviously I don't have a trained eye like you have, but I was looking for tripping hazards.
Yeah, not necessarily that they're up like you might think, but you can start seeing maybe 3 or 4 of them as a group. They start going a little high, and then that's where the problems start, and then eventually they all dislodge.
Okay, but they are pavers, so
yes,
you know, people have to. You're expected to watch if you're walking on gravel. You're supposed to exercise caution because you're walking on gravel. These are pavers, so unless there's something really, really high, you know, you're expected to watch, you know, where you walk.
Right.
So, but if we're having the problem that the maintenance is a big issue, to really bring them down to something that's walkable, that's a different story.
What's the time it takes? I mean, I think council brought up for us to go another route with concrete, so that's the reason I went out and got a company.
Well, you did
I mean,
it's here. It's here for us
at
to
the end, it's up
discuss.
to you guys. You maybe want to go another
did your
route if you
job.
want to do it.
Could we
Yeah.
get an estimate just for reference? Could we get an estimate of how much it would cost just to do the other things, to close the mid-block ramps and extend the walkways to either one, so
Would
we
you
can
do the
compare it?
extensions with pavers also? or
Right, that was
just
going to be my
concrete?
question.
No, I think going with concrete, because we're not going to.
All right, let's do this. Let's go ahead to satisfy everything. Number one, get a situation of the price to extend, okay, what with concrete. Number two, I give everybody a cost of how much it's cost to maintain them. Number three, give us the situation where how many people have been hurt, and then bring this back to us and have all the information in front of us, and then we'll make our decision one way or another.
Yeah, that's fair. Can I add one thing? Was this CITI money that put this in initially?
What's that?
Was this CITI money that put this in initially?
I don't believe
I have
so.
no idea.
Back in the 90s, it wasn't.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
that
Okay.
was
I'd be interested in knowing
some
what
kind
the
of
answer
grant.
to that is exactly.
I bet you it was a grant, some type of grant.
So we could table this until and
That's fair, Bill.
motions
Yeah.
and get all the information to everybody and go forward.
Through the chair, based on that, I withdraw my motion.
Okay. And
And
your
I'll
second.
second.
Yeah.
I'll do drum
Okay.
second.
Thank you, Leslie.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
We go first reading of an ordinance.
Mayor and council, pardon my voice. It's an ordinance of the city of Miami Springs, Florida, updating the city's land development code of ordinances, clarifying definitions of floor area ratio in section 150.002 of the code,
11B,
modifying the
AC.
location of columns and parking garages in section 150.016, updating certain building requirements in the central business district in sections 150.070, correcting a conflict between the build to line and setback and access points in section 150.164 of the code, providing for implementation, providing for incorporation in the code, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date. I'm gonna tag team this with Chris.
You have people here
Before we get started,
Yes.
Iris, which 11 you want to item? Which 11A? Okay, you want to hear us talk first?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
let's talk.
Mayor, may I?
Before we get to this, let's go ahead and have a presentation on the reading, and then we'll make a decision on whether, how we want to approach it. We'll give everything out to the public first, get it all out like we did the overlay, get all out, and then we'll make a decision on whether we want to go ahead and vote on this tonight as a first reading, or we want to go ahead and have more information set forth for another first reading, so that's in the same vein as what we did with the layover. You agree with that?
Yep.
Okay, give your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. What you have before you is a draft ordinance that the manager, Chris, and I have been working on for some time in sections. It's in draft form because this has been our method of bringing new policy to you so that everyone's reading from the same sheet of music. It represents feedback that Chris has been getting for many months, and I'll walk you through some of that feedback. For about 6 months, we've been talking to a property owner on 36th Street with the intent of building an office building for his own business, and his architect has come back with feedback. You'll see that later on we got similar feedback in the overlay district on parking garages. Then Chris has been getting for some months now some feedback along the first couple blocks of 36th Street, and I'll indicate it on the map for you, of people that are renovating buildings and trying to bring in new business to 36th Street. And then we're pleased to report that since the passage of the overlay district, we've had the interest of not one but two property owners. The Santana property closed about a month and a half ago, and as they were closing, it sparked interest from the Washington Gym property owners. Or both of which I should say, were interested in seeing what they can do to bring that area up in terms of both commercial and residential. So essentially we brought forward tweaks to the zoning code that really have to do with building regulations. When we brought forward the overlay, or even when the zoning boundary regulations were changed in 2011 on 36th Street, there's only so much that the city can do as opposed to the deep dive that an architect has to do when they're going to conform the code to a particular property. And then as Chris has said, as opposed to advising property owners to come forward with variances, when he sees issues that rear their heads a couple times, there's an issue with the code. And so you've got two issues, we'll run through them. We got two issues that apply just to 36th Street, two issues that apply just to the overlay district, and I want to stress that it's not the entire CBD, it's the overlay district that was recently created, and then two issues that apply to both based on the construction issues. So with that, I think if Chris wants to run through it, and I'll chime in from time to time.
Good evening. Well, one of them is on 36th Street, where we have a conflict in our code where it calls for a front yard setback of 10 feet from the property line, but we also have a build-to line of 15 feet. So we never know whether it would apply the 15 feet or the 10 feet. When you have a build-to line, you must set it back 15 feet and no further. It has to be absolutely at 15. It gives no flexibility to bring it closer, to set it further back. So we wanted to go with the minimum of 10 foot that typically applies, and just get rid of the build-to line. I don't see a reason to force people to build at 15 feet, particularly when so many of the buildings are way back, like the EB Hotel. Some of them are right at the sidewalk line from some of the older buildings. So it's not like we have this uniform 15 feet that will be interrupting or gap toothing. So it's just going to make that simpler. And I always struggle with which one I'm supposed to apply. So that's one that we would like to do.
And if I can just jump in there for a second. When you have a form-based code where the code dictates to the property owners precisely, basically the shape of the building where it's going to go, the build-to line is certainly appropriate there. As Chris pointed out, we don't have that. We definitely have buildings that are right up against the sidewalk, especially in the first couple blocks of 36th Street, and then some of the older buildings. Some of the other buildings are set off. The one thing to keep in mind is 36th Street is the only zoning district that has the build-to line. Essentially, we're governed by setbacks. And on 36th Street specifically, it says you cannot provide parking in the area between the property line and that setback. So you don't have to worry that all of a sudden that area is going to be flooded with vehicles coming in and out of. They're still going to have to park either on the side or in the rear. This is simply to reconcile the build-to and the setback. And again, it's an issue specifically because we had a property owner on 4649 Northwest 36th Street want to develop. Right now, 4649 Northwest 36th Street, there's a two-story office building that's had, we'll call it intermittent vacancy. It's been vacant a long time. There's a building right next to that that's on the corner of 36 and East Drive. That one's been for lease and partially vacant forever. He currently owns 4649. He plans to build an office building over that. Parking, garage, 2 floors of office, and then a rooftop restaurant on top. He's still debating on whether or not he's going to buy the other one. That's not our concern, but we'll bring the other concern. But through the exercise of his architect, they brought forward this conflict.
While we're on 36th Street, another thing that we'd like to change is that we don't allow the columns of a parking garage to be in a parking space. You have to separate that out with a striped line of 1 foot. And the column is typically way at the back of the parking space, so to open your doors or to access your car, it has no benefit, and it's causing some loss of parking in some garage layouts that we've seen. It's more typical to allow them than not, but there certainly are some codes that do not allow them. I want you to be aware of that. But our recommendation is to allow it to be at the intersection of the spaces. The commercial residential ratio. We have a maximum ratio of residential 2 to 1 for
Going with
commercial.
this still on 36th Street? Or where
No,
you going?
sorry.
Okay.
Are we done with 36?
Actually, no, the access
Parking.
drives.
No, oh, access drives. Do we have the rest of this map? Okay, well, wait, hold, let me. Wait. Okay, so you can see from Palmetto and east, everything is really a corner property. So it's easy for the access to be from the side streets instead of off of 36th Street, which is what DOT wants, generally speaking. They don't want to see the access from there. They'll make you have your access off the side streets. Like the EBA Hotel is a great example. There's no curb cut on 36. You enter from either side street. However, the problem becomes when you get to the blocks west of Palmetto, from Palmetto to U Frank Drive and from Drive to Curtis Parkway. They're very long blocks. And by not allowing access from 36th Street, let's say you were the second or third property in from Palmetto, it would require you to go all the way down, if you were able to catch that little U Frank Drive. If not, you're down to Curtis, up Curtis, back over to Fairway, and back in. It's just not user-friendly. I think people are going to get frustrated. They're going to get confused. And so we'd like to see, to the degree that we can, to not prohibit that. We'll still look for some inventive ways to keep the traffic off 36, but we don't want to prohibit it outright. We want to be able to give the flexibility, because some of the projects, like a hotel we're talking with, they're very concerned that they don't want to have it mid-block and have to drive past them and up and back, and perhaps not even understand how to do that. How do I get there? There it is. I see it, but I can't get in.
Right,
So,
and if I may, that's why, I mean, we really only added a couple of positive phrases here. For essentially for corner properties, entrances shall be oriented away from Northwest 36th Street. Then, essentially, we took away the blanket prohibition and said, to the extent possible, vehicular access shall be limited away from 36th Street. And that is to say, you know, if you've got corner properties here, those certainly could be oriented away. But if you happen to have properties here that have complete frontage and maybe need an access drive there, that would be permitted. They'd have to go through a site plan process that have to deal with site triangles and other issues. Additionally, another limiting factor that this came up in conversations while briefing the council members is that it's not as if all of a sudden this now creates traffic that's going to be darting across 36th Street. You have very limited median cuts, which are going to prohibit big swaths of this from being able to just make a left turn across 3 lanes of traffic. To someone's credit, yes, if in the same way that someone turns in this way, you will have people slowing down to make a right turn into a driveway. Just bear in mind, for example, this is the gas station, this is the Chinese restaurant, and this is the big hotel right on over here. That property is big enough where if you miss the first driveway, you saw it and can swing around to another curb cut. Once you start getting over here to some of these properties that are undergoing redevelopment, and by redevelopment I mean they're being renovated. They're not being torn down and rebuilt. They're just going in there and either putting new office buildings or trying to come up with some adaptive use for it. The ability to do that goes away, and it's not as if they have a lot of signage and frontage. So, you know, essentially, someone's got to know where they're going. If they pass it, they may not come back, or they may not know how to come back. I mean, there's no signage that says for access to these buildings, turn on Curtis Parkway and come back around. So it's not going to happen all that often. I mean, how many situations have you come across on 36?
Just a couple, but we do have one, an important hotel that we've been in conversation with, and they basically told us if they can't have access to the hotel project from 36, it's a deal killer for them, and their flags won't brand it. They can't get someone to brand it with that kind of access problem. So that's something important for us too.
So those are the two issues of 36th Street.
It's actually three.
Well, the garage issue actually applies to more than one district, to be clear.
Okay.
But I guess you want to talk about the two.
Yeah. Did we also address stall depth?
No.
Because I thought I had that. Is that something that we can add in?
Wait, either for another second reading or a second reading, it's up to the council to decide.
The one thing that I wanted to change is our minimum stall size is 9 by 19, which is quite unusual. It's typically 8.5 or 9 by 18. I'd like to change ours from 9 by 18, 1 foot shorter. 19 feet is a very deep parking depth. Also causes us some problems in parking lot layout for projects.
What's the standard?
Say it again now. Say it
9 by
again.
18 is the standard. Ours is 9 by 19.
So you want to make it 8 the
yeah,
standard.
I'd like it to be more the standard that people who do these kind of projects are going to be familiar with.
So the 18.
We have a lot of them come in at 18, and I have to tell them, no, they have to be 19. And sometimes it can really mess up your arrangement of parking.
All right.
Right,
So
and now
That would be
while
for
we're on-
both.
I'm sorry?
That would be for downtown and 36.
that would
Yeah.
citywide, really,
City-
because it's
citywide.
citywide
Citywide.
9 by 19. It'd become 9 by 18.
And now that we're on, let's stay on the vein of parking structures, because again, they do apply to more than one location. Essentially, I just want to just point out the fact that as much as we have incentivized and desire parking, our code is actually not very parking friendly, especially towards parking garages. So again, we have a extended stall, which eliminates parking. We have 9-foot spaces when you can get by with 8.5. We're leaving at 8.5, but that all adds up to reduced parking. Not putting the parking columns or making the parking columns go at the end of the structure means that certain construction techniques are not permissible if depending on the size of the parking garage, limiting parking further. And the third issue is a definitional component of classifying FAR. I'll let Chris talk about that.
Yeah, our code exempts the first 20 feet of a parking garage from FAR calculations. We'd like to remove that limitation on 20 feet and make all of the parking garage would not be counted towards FAR, so that floor area could go into the construction of the building. So we get more hotel units, more offices,
More parking garage.
and more parking garage.
So you recall that one of our residents is a planner in my beach, Rogelio, came when we talked about the overlay and said that a lot of places are requiring parking garages to be at 10 feet spans between decks. And that is in very dense places like downtown Miami. That is so that in the future, if vehicle usage is down, those garages can be converted into something else. That's likely not to be the case on 36th Street because we don't have that kind of density. But because our code says that the first 20 feet are exempt, it doesn't say the first 2 stories or the first 3 stories, it says 20 feet, there is an incentive to make the parking decks 9 feet or 8 feet, because now you can get essentially another floor within that first 20 feet. So if we want to encourage the development of structured parking, then what Chris has proposed is that parking structure be treated the same way. Well, the limitation be removed, and essentially the entire parking structure be exempt to encourage not only more parking garage but higher floors, but also it be treated like you would any other non-occupiable space in a building, say like a mechanical room or a stairwell or an elevator shaft. And the idea is those are the components of a building that you want, and you don't want them, cutting corners by making them smaller or tighter. As a matter of fact, one of the projects that came forward in the overlay district is talking about doing like a 15-foot first floor, so that any deliveries for the commercial areas can be done behind the buildings and away from sight, not block roadways. And so those are the kinds of things that you want to encourage, which is smart development, when someone comes in and puts a structured parking unit.
Okay.
I just want to ask, and just to confirm, by doing this change, it doesn't affect the height of the building.
No.
The building is going to stay the same.
No, I mean, in the Central Business District and the overlay, you still have the 3 stories, 40 feet. On 36th Street, you have a step down within 150 feet of a residential property, you can't exceed 5 stories, 55 feet. So however you get to 55 feet. Once you get beyond that 150 feet, you do have additional height to play with, and then the limiting factor becomes the FAA and Miami-Dade Aviation. But essentially, that doesn't play with it. It is simple. If you have the ability to build a garage, it now incentivizes you to go ahead, bite the bullet, property owner, expend the money in the garage, because we're not hampering you from going to essentially, if you want to build more parking, we take away from your building. And it's a double-edged sword, because even if they build a modest building to park it, it goes against the building. And so it simply just takes away the 3 items for involving parking garages, simply incentivize property owners to go ahead and build the structure. And we're fortunate that on 36th Street, the property owner wants to build an office building with a built-in parking garage, and then one of the projects that came forward in the overlay wants to build a central garage that's lined by commercial with some residential, and we'll get into that next.
I have a question before you go on, since we're on parking with the driveways. The driveways that would be allowed on 36th Street, and we already have some, like you said, the hotels and some restaurants and stuff. But would those have a, like for instance, at the hotel where I don't know if it's Travelodge, I can't remember what hotel it is, but Comfort Inn, there's a really wide driveway that hits 36th Street, so it allows a lot of wiggle room for, instead of backing up cars, you can kind of pull in even if a car is waiting for traffic. Are we going to have some sort of requirement as to how wide those driveways are? Because I think that helps eliminate the backup.
Sure, and we'll have the input of DOT on what they think is appropriate and what's necessary, and that we can make it as safe as possible. On a larger project, they may actually make you do a decel lane, a deceleration lane. That would be a 4th lane on 36 that you pull out of the lane of traffic to pull in and then go into the project. That would be on a big project.
And I have one other thing, I guess, before we keep going with the what do you call it? The space back. I forget what you call it. Setback. Thank you. Thank you. 10 to 15. Right now, where we have, I guess 10 is the minimum that we have in some areas.
Is the minimum required front yard setback on 36.
I can't see any reason to allow new building to go at 10. That's a ridiculously small amount of clearance there. So I don't see any reason that we would redo something that makes no sense. And I understand that was done like that because we kept, FDOT or whoever kept widening 36th Street, so it got to the point where they had to allow the minimum of 10 feet. But
actually, I think the motivation for that was because before you even get to Oakwood, you have residential. The idea was to try and step forward your height. Because obviously we have a charter provision that says anything that has residential is 3 stories or 40 feet, so put that aside. So to the extent that anybody wants to develop on 36th Street with residential, it'll likely be on the backside, and that there'll be that step up that I mentioned. But the height, you want to try and move it as far away from the single family as possible, and also bring the building up so that any retail that you have on the first floor gets a lot of vehicular visibility. So by moving the building back, you essentially take up real estate in the back that can be occupied by a structured parking or even just parking at grade. And with the limitation of no parking in the front yard setback, you ensure that there's going to be no parking on the front. So there is going to be some, in my humble estimation, some play. When you eliminate the build-to line, that means that they do not have to put a building at 10 feet. But more likely than not is they're going to front-end load the building because of the height, and you'll have some play between 10, 15, maybe 20. When they realize that they can't do anything in there but have it be a landscape buffer or some other kind of buffer, with maybe perhaps outside dining or something to that effect, it's possible. They're probably going to want to move their building as close to it as possible to reduce how much property the rest of it's going to take up. So that's sort of the incentive behind it, and that's what we've seen. They want to build as close to the property as possible to help the tenants, to help the visibility of everything, and move all of their ancillary uses and accessory structures to the backside.
And also keep in mind the blocks that we talked about from Palmetto to Curtis Parkway. They're very shallow. On the other blocks, you can aggregate and create deeper parcels where a larger setback, if you had in mind 20, 25 feet, which some cities have, it's just going to put the lid on any kind of redevelopment of those properties.
That being said, a 10-foot setback avoids what happened in Virginia Gardens, which is the storage building where either, I don't know if you remember, if it was an elevator shaft or a stairwell shaft, is about 10, 15 feet from the corner. So when you come out on that street, which is, I can't remember what it is right now, 62nd Avenue. When you're going to make a right turn on 62nd Avenue, your car's got to come out onto 36th Street about 5 feet so you can see what's coming. So at least by having, and that's why ultimately all this has to go to site plan and Chris's vetting, you have to have the site triangles and all those things are preserved with the setback as is.
Okay, so now we're on to the overlay district. Again, as Dan pointed out, not the entire central business district, just the overlay. We are suggesting that removing there's a 2-to-1 maximum ratio between residential and commercial, 2,000 square foot of commercial ground floor, no more than 4,000 second floor, 10,000, no more than 20,000, and so on. What's happening, however, is the few developments that we're working with on Hook Square and on the theater project, they want to put a central parking garage in the middle towards the back of the lot and then line that in typical good planning fashion with retail and restaurants, which means that on the ground floor, they're probably only using maybe 20, 25, maybe 30% of that lot, which means that they'd only be able to replicate that on the second and third floor, and they really want to do fairly full floor plates up there. So we'd like to get rid of the ratio and not punish them by having the parking garage instead of the surface parking lot. You want to put that garage in the back, hide it, line it, and then have more residential above, which in every scenario we've seen is well over that ratio of 2-to-1.
So through the chair, Chris, so what you're saying is these two projects that you just mentioned, the parking garages will be wrapped, you won't be able to see them, right?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
So think about it like this: when in the central business district, you are permitted to build, and I'm gonna say central business district because this regulation, what we're saying is that regulation stays in place, but for the overlay district, that the ratio, that the overlay district be exempt from that ratio. So let me explain a little bit further the ratio. Currently, you can build in the entire central business district, if you meet the parking, if you meet the setbacks and the FAR, a 1-story, 2-story, a 3-story commercial building. The last commercial building that we had, you can think of Max Milam's office building across from Milam's that formerly had Apple Dental there, or still might be there. You can build that no problem. The only requirement for a commercial building is that you have a 1,500 square feet on the first floor. When the code contemplates a mixed-use project, which the code currently contemplates a mix of uses, which could be either first floor retail and 2 floors of residential, or an even greater mix where you can have first floor retail, office, and then residential. But when you get to that, there's some other conditions that get put onto these projects. And before I get into those conditions, I want you all to bear in mind that part of the reason, and everyone complains about the theater and how downtrodden it is and everything else, but to build in Miami Springs is incredibly difficult. Of course, we have FAR caps, height restrictions, setbacks. They're all well and good. They preserve the quality of life in Miami Springs. Then it goes a little bit further, though. So then we tell you the proportion of your building. And that becomes a very difficult thing for people to develop because on top of that, in the overlay, we've also asked for some other amenities. So while we contemplate a 3-story building with potentially first floor retail, and the 2 floors above it residential, in that 2-to-1 ratio, it's not limited by floors. Instead, it's limited by square footage. So what happens there? If they try to deliver to the city a project that has in it the what's the word I'm looking for? The colonnade. Thank you. The colonnade. That is a recessed first floor, like the Bella Bakery. Even though that one's, we'll call it modest, it's got about a 4 or 5 foot recess. If they recess that first floor, that now means that they have to proportionately remove the same amount of space in the residential side. And one of the things that the council said was, well, we don't want to have sort of portico-shares with the residential back and the commercial back. We had some residents come up and say it's try to bring the building forward and encourage the that recessing, because what it does is really expand sidewalks without doing anything to the roadwork infrastructure. So that's one example is the theater property that came forward. Mind you, it's all in draft format, but these are the conversations that Chris has and that sometimes we have to have with architects and property owners when they come forward and say, look, you're asking for one thing over here, and now this is limiting us in another way. The second project on Hook Square. So to Chris's point, if you look at the map here, this is obviously the theater property over here, and this is the frontage, and they're contemplating essentially continuing the retail all the way around this way, with a parking structure in the center, and residential above it, sort of like the Dover Coal study had back in 2001. When these folks started or were closing on their property, they expressed interest in buying Hook Square. Lo and behold, the property owners over there said, "Well, maybe we'll build." And so they came forward. They're much less further along and said, "We are also interested in putting a mixed-use project here with retail that wraps around, even has outside dining and different things." What's the problem there? Because this building doesn't have road frontage all the way, this is an alley, and then this abuts the Point Siena Apartments, I think it's called. It's 2 stories. You can't realistically put commercial on the backside of the property and expect it to be viable, and they're just not going to do it. Whether it's retail or office, it's just not viable. What they had contemplated was, again, retail along the road frontage, parking all behind it, so it's semi-structured in that it's covered, but it's covered by residential with an internal plaza and all the amenities in there. What happens there? Essentially, we're telling you, if you want residential above and you meet the FAR cap, you need to have the corresponding amount of commercial. So you either have to grow your commercial in order to keep the residential, and what happens when you grow the commercial? You eat at your parking. But you've grown your commercial, so you need more parking. So it's a catch-22 that, once again, de-incentivizes the building of additional parking. So by saying to just this property right here, because the overlay district just covers this right here, by exempting these areas from the ratio, you're basically saying, by code, you're required to put retail on the first floor. Retail is required, both in CBD throughout, but also in the overlay specifically. Then it's saying you can have a mix of uses. We're not going to tell you what those uses are. You can have residential, you can have offices. In full disclosure, the 2 projects that have come forward have not expressed an interest in having small office. That market's very, very soft everywhere. But instead, what they're saying is, look, we want to have commercial that we think is viable along the road frontages, while permitting then residential to be up top, and then both of them having some kind of structured parking arrangement. So that's the first thing. And then there's a second issue that goes with the feedback that we got on the unit size.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of feedback on the unit size. The minimum unit size of 900 square feet is very large, particularly when it doesn't differentiate, as many codes do, between the minimum unit size for a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, and so on. Many codes would do that and have like 550, 600 for a 1-bedroom. 900s would typically be at least a 2 and maybe even a 3-bedroom unit. So 900 minimum doesn't really get you much of a unit mix. People aren't going to do 900 square foot 1-bedrooms. There's not a market for that. So then we end up with a bunch of very large apartments, and not the smaller apartments that the empty nesters are looking to move out of their house and into a nice place, or the kids are coming back from college and want a nice place to be able to live. They want a little smaller unit. So we're suggesting that we bump it down from 900 to 800 square feet, with no unit less than 700 square feet. So there could be a few under 800, but the average would have to be 800. And then we prohibited efficiencies in studio apartments. We made that clear so that you couldn't end up with really small apartments. And I think that's it.
And to be clear, when Chris, again, with his knowledge of different codes, we kicked around the idea of having sort of like tiered square footages. And it was one of those things, again, that it was putting regulations on properties that we just don't know how a building's going to fit on it. So instead, what you can think about it like this. The minimum of these units now is 700 square feet. But by having an average, it means that you need to have the commensurate amount of larger units to get to the 800. And the idea there is to encourage a mix of units. 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. That's in line with some of the feedback that council members have given us, which is simply that, there are kids that are becoming young professionals and are having to move to Pembroke Pines to get an apartment. We have people that are trying to get out of their homes but want to stay in Miami Springs but can't find multifamily, so they're moving to Kendall. And so the idea is that with a mix of units, and to be perfectly candid again, with the type of projects that are coming forward, they've said that these are initially going to be residential. They may contemplate condo, but these aren't the kind of developers that they're not developers, they're just property owners that are decided to buy in Miami Springs. So they want to have a mix of units, but they won't be able to offer one-bedroom units at 900 square feet, because unless you get to Miami Beach and you get to sort of old co-op buildings, they simply don't make units that size anymore. What's more is that while the unit count might shift a little bit, and we're talking about anywhere in the 5 to 7 unit range, you really got to think of things in terms of occupancy. And so if you have a bunch of 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, what are the occupancy of those going to be? And in order for people to be able to rent them, what you're most likely going to have happen is they're going to subdivide their units. They're going to rent them out to multiple people. You know, most likely 1 bedroom will get leased out, maybe even a living room, in order to make ends meet of a rental that might be 1,800, 1,900 square feet for a unit that size. And what I do know is that in order to make it family friendly, at least so far, the theater property, they've proffered the fact as a condition of site plan, and they'll do a declaration, is that they'll prohibit Airbnb. And so the idea is that they don't want to have transients. They really want to preserve that as an expansion of the available residential amenities that the community has, while creating a captured audience for the retail on the first floor. So that's the feedback we got, and we came up with not what they asked for. This is something that Chris contemplated and thought that this was a compromise that still preserves the integrity of unit size in Miami Springs without, throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Through the chair, what's the legal teeth on that, preventing Airbnb?
Well, we cannot, since we didn't pass an ordinance in 2011,
That's why I'm asking.
we're not grandfathered in. But if a property owner wants to proffer it, whether that's a single building that's regulating the residential, or even potentially, we don't have them here, but like a condo association or a HOA, that's essentially, they're agreeing by contract not to permit those things to happen there. So if a private property owner wanted to say, we're not going to allow this here, we'll take it all day long. And we're not enforcing it. They're going to have to enforce it by way of their bylaws.
But if they sell the they sell the property, that's just something they enforce, whoever the owner is. That can change with.
They're rentals, but if they, it would be part of their bylaws. And again, they're proffering it, so we'll take it. Okay. And that's it, Mayor and Council. So we're happy to answer any questions. Again, they cover 3 areas: 36th Street, the overlay, and then a couple issues on both.
The one thing I want to make clear, what you said about renting, they're going to have control over these buildings, about who lives there, who doesn't. The enforcement of having more than one person, more than one family living, that's up to them to enforce that in their leases agreements with them people. Not that's their prerogative. That's going to be under their control, because they don't want that to happen, because they're making the money off. They don't want to have something like that happen.
You're right. It's an enforcement issue for that building, no different than a code enforcement for us.
Right.
Essentially, they want to de-incentivize that from happening, as opposed to creating the condition for it to happen and then having to chase after it. So they think that by having a better mix of units, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, you're going to get people that are going to live in it. They're not going to subdivide it out. They're not going to do that, and it's going to make. They're probably still going to have to police it, because to say that it's not going to happen ever, it's impossible. But I think that you're like I said, de-incentivizing it from happening.
Any questions?
And I just want to mention, of course, the first step in this whole exercise was the template, which we dealt with a few months back. As a result of that, I suppose, one could say, we've had a lot of hits on properties in terms of what a developer can do and what he can't do, he or she can do or can't do, relative to a new thing. All your takes are well defined, the both of you, on Chris, especially you. I know you put a lot of hard work into this to make this happen. But I think this is, at least to my way of thinking, one of the first times in the history of Miami Springs that we've had this much activity in an area all at once. I find that interesting. I don't know yet which way I find it interesting, but it's interesting. And in order to accommodate this and make it make sense going forward, we're trying to tweak things that would help to do that. Am I online here with this?
Absolutely, yes.
So I think, well, let me ask you this real quick. What's the downside to all of this? Any?
I don't see any, frankly. I know that some people talk about the density and they're concerned about more units. Now, keep in mind, if we reduce the minimum unit size, it does not in any way increase the size of the building or the square footage of the building. It just shuffles the unit mix. You might have to start taking 2 apartments that you were contemplating at 600, putting them together and dividing, and you'll end up with some less units. But historically, and even back to the Dover Coal study of more than a decade ago, and when we talk to people, I think everyone agrees that they would like to see a more vibrant, more active downtown. Sidewalk cafes, restaurants, people strolling, people out with their children, riding the bike, whatever. And in order to get that activity, you need a little bit of a density surrounding that to make it work. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it all low density and a very active, vibrant downtown. That doesn't work.
Right. And apparently with both of these projects that you gentlemen are entertaining, right, or the city's entertaining right now, I should say, that's covered. The density aspect is covered. Am I wrong? With the parking garages. You have people living there. They go to work, they come home. They go to work, they come home. You're not getting all this additional density coming into Miami Springs.
Right, and in planning we call that captured trips. If they can live upstairs and walk downstairs to go to the gym, or walk downstairs to go to a restaurant, then go back up. Maybe some of them even have a home occupational license. They work from home. So you can really start to reduce that amount of traffic as well.
And said, stay for the record, this could still, no matter if we don't do any of these changes, still mixed use could be built there.
Oh, absolutely.
Under the code is.
Absolutely.
So we're not changing anything.
Yeah,
as
with
far-
existing,
So
right.
people understand that. There's still, the only thing we're doing is doing different thinking on, well, what you're presenting. It's a little different thinking on how much square footage of the units could be. You're giving them more incentive for parking. But the bottom line is, if you didn't touch this at all, they still could build the mixed-use, commercial mixed-use, residential units there.
Absolutely,
Okay,
Mayor.
so
And if I
we're
may,
not changing any of that.
and if I may, I do want to point out one thing, and William did this due diligence, is that if you look at the multifamily that exists throughout Miami Springs, we have unit sizes that go down into the low 500s, and we have single-family homes that are smaller than 900 square feet. We have some 2-1s that are 860 square feet. So essentially, what the code currently requires for the entire Central Business District, but we're only saying for the overlay, is build the equivalent of what constitutes some single-family homes in Miami Springs in an apartment fashion. But we still don't majority have that everywhere else. So, I mean, and William has those numbers. He can circulate them to council if you want to take a look at them. But I was kind of surprised myself at how small some of these units are along Royal Poinciana, for example.
Iris? You want to speak now, or you want to speak now? You want to wait a little bit then? Okay. All right, we'll keep going then.
I have
Go ahead.
a few questions. Chris, on, well, I don't know which way to go first with this. I have some questions on this, but I want to let everyone know that I'm going to ask, and I don't know if I need to do that now. Dan, you'll tell me to delay this for the next meeting, a vote on this, because
All right, go ahead.
this came out on Wednesday. I didn't see it till, I was out of the country. So late Wednesday night, Thursday and Friday were a holiday. It's my understanding that the city manager and you have sat with the council people to brief them on certain things. I haven't had that opportunity to do that. So I don't feel I have the same information that the other council people do.
Understood.
So I won't be ready to vote on this tonight. However, I do have some questions on it that I think we can go ahead and address now. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Under 4F, where we have, well, first of all, under 4F, limit any residential elements to upper floors. Residential dwelling units in the upper floors shall be, and then have, so we need to, there's a typo there. We either need to remove shall be or
Shall have an average.
Right, okay. But then, just where we have efficiencies and studio apartments are prohibited, what do you think about including lofts in there? Because right now, a loft is kind of what we used to call a studio. And I looked up what a loft is, and a loft apartment, this is under REMAX, refers to a large adaptable open space, usually without any internal walls except for a bathroom, which is the same thing as a studio. So perhaps including loft in there or similar type.
Maybe put studio slash
Studio.
loft
Studio.
type
Yeah,
apartment.
Well,
that's no problem. I mean, that
efficiencies,
wouldn't prohibit
loft,
that
and
wouldn't prohibit
studios.
a townhouse, for example, like on the Bella Bakery building. They actually are second floor townhouses. So because they're separated floors, that yeah, absolutely. Okay, we can add that if there's consensus.
Sure.
I think what we need to do is also create a definition of loft so that we understand what we're prohibiting.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and then on D, 1 and 2, I'm not sure, it says setback, lot coverage, and floor area, we removed the original one, and then we have minimum setbacks and floor area limitations, are we,
Oh, so
shouldn't those have definitions, what is that?
No, those essentially, there's no change. I just renumbered them. So when I conformed Chris's stuff to the code by striking the build to line in part 1, you have to renumber the rest of it. Sometimes you can say the
Right,
clerk has to do it,
but I mean, shouldn't minimum setbacks, what are we saying there? We're just saying minimum setbacks?
no. What I'm saying is that there's no change to the code.
I know, I understand that, but I don't understand what the original code meant there. Setbacks, lot coverage, and floor area, and then 1, minimum setbacks, 2, floor area limitations. What did the original code mean there?
I can include that if you'd like. I'll pull that up real quick. But essentially, in 1, let me read this real quick.
Because the original one had an explanation of what build to line meant, but
Right.
then we just have.
That remains there, and forgive me for not being clear when I conform this. Where is it? Large scale. Give me 1 second. Okay, so that is in D. Almost there. Okay. So currently, you have D1, which is the build to line, which Chris has recommended to strike. Then you have D2, which now would become the new D1. It says minimum setbacks, and then from there it goes on to list A through F in terms of criteria. So front yard setback shall be a minimum of 10 feet from the property line. No off-street parking shall be allowed between the property line and the buildings. Rear yard setback shall be a minimum of 10 feet from the property line. Side yard setback shall be a minimum of 5 feet from the property line or 2.5 feet from architectural structures such as breezeway, arches, or canopies. D provides adjacent to residential districts, side yard or rear yard shall have a minimum depth of 10 feet. E says all setbacks may be used for utility right-of-way, and F says architectural elements such as canopies or portico shares, may encroach 5 feet into the front setback. So essentially, all that is remaining the same. So
Are you just didn't include that in here?
right.
Okay.
I didn't include it because it's staying the same.
All right, okay.
I mean, so if the council wants, I can include it. I just didn't want to
know that
busy
there's
it
a
all
need.
up because essentially what I was doing is just renumbering
All right,
the
I
sections.
understand now.
And that's typically the dot, dot, dot that you see indicates there's more language there and it stays exactly the same.
Right.
We just
Right.
don't muddy it up by including a lot of language that's not changing.
So the minimum setbacks with us going between 10, 15 to 10 wouldn't affect that paragraph.
Correct. The setback stays the same. Essentially, as Chris pointed out, this got by everybody, but there's a conflict. We're saying that the minimum setback is 10 feet, but the build to is 15, and so you create this dead space of, well, which one do we build to? Do we build, if we wanted to put it all the way forward, does the property owner build to 10 feet? Does it build to 15? And essentially, as I was saying, this is the only section that has a build to line. We're governed by setbacks, and Chris felt comfortable eliminating that with the other conditions that are in the setback section.
Anybody else?
I have questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, how many residential units are we talking about in the overlay? In that proposed project? It's 2 floors of residential?
Yeah, both projects are coming forward with 2 floors of residential above.
So I'm
the first
talking
floor.
as an average, because I know you're averaging the square feet and all that. What do you estimate will be, how many residential units?
I know that the difference, what they were asking for, or what's permitted, they were allowed to build. You have that number in front of you, William?
For which one?
For, let's just say, the theater property, for example. Under the current code.
Under the current code, they could build 50 units.
50. And we did, we ran some quick numbers. Mind you, just bear in mind that none of us are architects, and he's using rough numbers, and you have to.
No, I'm asking for an estimate.
Right. I mean, that number would change to, was it 57?
No, if under this change
Yeah.
that we're proposing, it will go to 52.
Oh, 52. Okay.
Two more.
We're talking about 2-unit change.
So we could have possibly 52 apartments.
Right. As compared to
50.
50, what's permitted
Okay.
now. The only thing that would change realistically, yes, I know it's an increase, but what you're really changing is the mix of units. So the amount of residential area is not changing, just how you chop it up.
Okay. Just
The
wanted.
fact that the smallest could be with 700 square feet.
If they had the
If the
commensurate
average-
amount
No,
of,
right.
to bring up the average.
I
to
just
800.
want to have an idea, and I want to have an idea mostly because of my concern over the infrastructure in terms of congestion on the circle, and what that represents in terms of residential and how many cars that would be, and what traffic would look like. And I know that we've discussed some of the traffic calming situations that would be a result of this actually naturally. But that is a concern that I want to put out there, and I know that you all understand that. The height of the buildings will never be more than 3 stories, correct?
3
That's
stories
correct,
or 40
absolutely.
feet.
There's,
Correct.
there's nothing, I mean, short of a referendum changing it, there's no way that Chris could approve that.
Even the parking garage.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so that's my input, is that I'm concerned about the infrastructure in terms of the traffic, and what the city is planning, because I think that we need to go into this with some kind of plan as to how we're going to address that. I think that there's a couple of times during the day that we're pretty gridlocked there, and this will add to that, and we need to be very conscientious if we move forward with this in terms of. So I also want to put out there that in terms of the average square feet, I would shy away from the loft situation, because I start thinking about that as an efficiency kind of situation, which we're trying to stay away from, and my understanding is we're not going to allow efficiencies there. So I would rather be more of a permanent living situation than have something like that, even though they're cute and all that.
No, we're saying a loft will not be allowed.
Oh, okay.
Including it as somebody could call it a loft instead of a studio.
Okay,
I think
so
what she
right, I
was-
didn't understand that, just want to
I
make
think,
sure.
I think
Okay.
Councilwoman Mitchell was just asking for a definition, perhaps should be inserted under 150-002.
Now I get it, I didn't
Yeah.
understand what she was asking
Yeah.
before, so thank you for that, because yes, I'm in agreement with that.
And Councilwoman, to your point, as you recall, in order for these buildings to enjoy some of the stuff that the overlay brought with it, there were certain creative excellence design criteria that they had to comply with, an area of which included traffic calming measures. So now, I'm going to say, just to be clear, I mean, traffic calming means just that. It means that you are creating the conditions for cars to slow down. It's some of the things that we've talked about on Royal Point Siena, where by bringing out medians and bulb outs, people will slow down. So the way that traffic calming works in that area is really, it's to incentivize people to go another way. So
Right.
if you live there, you're going to park there, and the idea is hopefully you'll frequent the shops and not move your car around. And those are people that are going to be frequenting the retail and parking in their residential spot, not on a ground level spot. And that pedestrian activity will be incentivized by the fact that they live there and they don't have to park somewhere else.
Right.
So
Because
that's
right now we have traffic that comes in here that doesn't purchase anything here or visit any establishment here. They just cut through our city. So anything that can deter people from cutting through our city is something I would like to see happen, like I'm sure everyone else here would.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
I mean, anything? Any more, Bobby?
No, I just think this is a pretty good opportunity, and I thank you guys for your hard work on this, because this could be something moving forward here. I mean, we haven't had hits on these 2 pieces of property for whatever.
Right.
Never, not in my time.
And here we are.
Iris, you want to come up now?
I'm sorry that my voice is, yes. My name is Isis Carvajal, and I have practiced as an attorney for public entities for over 30 years. And the only purpose for me to be here is to ask that there will be a greater opportunity for the citizens of this beautiful Miami Springs that we want to keep as it is. to be able to review this in more detail and be able to comment on it and be informed about the perhaps unintended consequences of what otherwise might be seen as a minor change in a code. A land development ordinance is very significant, and it's very significant for the city. So even a comma change that is made could have a great impact. So I would just ask that the first reading be postponed for another meeting so that the public would have an opportunity to be better informed. This was a very short week. People were out of the city. People have company that couldn't attend to. There was no staff to talk with if we wanted to. And I think that Councilman Mitchell, specifically mentioned about being out of town and how that impeded her ability to be as well informed as she otherwise would have wanted to be. So I just wanted to make sure that we have a transparent city council and that the citizens be given the opportunity. This was not a good week to put this out there with such a short period of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing, correct, Councilman? I mean, anybody else want to speak on the item?
First reading here.
First reading.
Through the
Okay,
chair.
I'm going to close the public hearing.
Okay, through the chair, I'd like council to consider, in deference to what the councilor just mentioned and Councilwoman Mitchell, that she perhaps has not had the opportunity to go through what others up here have. And in deference to your statement a moment ago of folks that have, due to the holidays, have not had the opportunity to review this and offer their input, I too would like to see this put off until the next meeting in December. Okay. I understand, and I applaud the administration for wanting to bring this now to get a head start on it going forward before the holidays, because nothing's going to happen till the end of the year anyway with this, as we all know. Nothing happens after Halloween the rest of the year. Come on. So we're going to come in here the second week in December and tackle this again, and I think it'll give the opportunity for everybody to embrace this, study it, bring their concerns forward, and let's do the first reading then. What do you guys think?
That's a good idea. One question though: are there any changes that we talked about here tonight?
The one
that we want besides the loft and everything. Right. There was really no changes, so that when the first reading comes up the next time, what we have him present out when we have the first reading in December, is there anything that has to be changed so that the public does get the full picture of what's going on here? Besides,
Mayor, I have two comments. One was the loft, and the second one was the parking stall length.
Right.
Stall length.
From 19 to
18 to 19.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's only
That's
two
the other thing I
changes that I see from this reading here.
And the other thing, but this I have to have time to look at, is I feel pretty strongly about the not having a 10-foot setback, and keep building the way we're building up to 36th Street, but I need time to look at it.
Well,
so I don't know if that's something that will just,
that can stay in there, and then we can,
Right.
if you have to tweak it at, you're one person that thinks I think you got to reevaluate
Right,
why
right.
that 10-foot is there.
I agree.
On 36th Street now.
Right, I
You're
agree.
talking, you got to reevaluate why they did that on 36th Street. But other than that, the ordinance can be presented to public as it's set right now with them three changes.
I agree, Mayor.
So now the public, this is sort of like, I really wanted this to happen like we did the overlay, have a special meeting, go over it, then come out to first reading. And in reality, it's coming the way that I feel we had a better structured situation. I respect their ideas there, but this is going forward now. So we'll go for first reading. What date is that?
December 10th.
December 10th? It'll be the first reading. And the people can go ahead and look at the ordinance.
Mayor and Council, just to be abundantly clear, we had hoped to bring this in the first meeting in November. But what we're trying to do, and I think we've done that with the overlay and certainly with this, is try to bring you as complete a rough first draft as possible, so that when you all have a discussion up here, we're tinkering and making a better product, and we didn't want to bring something incomplete to you. So
all in all, you're only besides her going over a little bit more and everybody on council, you really brought a product that only has 3 changes right now.
Yeah.
But the main thing is the residents go over it for themselves.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was a little surprising that the way the ordinance is wrote now, you could fit in the. I'm not going to talk about the Hook Square project, but I'm not we're more familiar with what's happening in the theater project.
Mhm.
With the fact that in residential, you could put 50 units the way it stands now, and it looks like 50, 52, 50 units would go in the way it's proposed on paper here. Was a little surprising to me. I thought,
More.
yeah, I thought it
Yeah,
would have been more,
I
but
would
it's
too.
not. So
I would've too.
that's something that was surprising to me. Okay, the December 10th,
Yes, sir.
first reading.
Gotcha.
Y'all read up on it.
Mayor and council, can we do that by motion?
Motion to have the first reading for December 10th? Do I have a motion?
Motion to move, sir.
Have a
Second
second?
it.
Call vote.
Vice Mayor Petrolanda?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Zapata?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Yes. We go on to 11B, a resolution.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Springs certifying and declaring the official results of the special election of the city held on November 6, 2018, and providing for an effective date. Erica?
The item went to the electors on November 6th for votes, and the vote was for annexation on the current application to Miami-Dade County was yes, 3,416, where no, 2,168. And this item needs to be approved by the council.
Give me the percentages.
61% for yes and 38% for no.
I need a motion.
Motion to move the results.
Second.
Call a vote.
Vice Mayor Petrolanda?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Zapata?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Yes, has anything to do with anything as far as the court deals going on?
I'll just say briefly that, I mean, certainly we have announced a shade session. We can call one to discuss this at length further, but I can say that as soon as it's passed, either the day after or the day after that, we notified both opposing counsel, Mr. David and Mr. Gibbs, that this had passed, essentially mooting out significant portions of their complaint. So we're waiting on this to be approved and executed so we can transmit to them our official result, and then we'll be engaging in further conversation with them about streamlining their complaints.
Thank you. We go to, where were we at? C.
Yeah, this is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Springs amending the schedule of golf charges and fees for the operation of the Miami Springs Golf and Country Club, reserving the right and authority to amend or supplement the schedule of charges effective date. This is the annual winner rates that Paul establishes for the golf course.
Motion to approve 11C as read.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Call a vote.
Vice Mayor Petrolanda?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Zapata?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Yes. We go to D.
This is a recommendation by Finance Professional Services that council award city RFP number 01-1819 janitorial services for municipal facilities to Cleaning Systems, Inc., the highest ranked responsible bidder, and authorize the execution of a contract which is attached in the amount of $11,400 per month or $136,800 per year for the cleaning of all of the municipal facilities as funds were budgeted in the fiscal year 1819 budget pursuant to section 3111E1 of the city code.
Through the chair, I have a question on this item.
First, let's have a motion.
Okay.
Do I get a motion from you?
Motion to approve 11D.
Do I get a second?
Second.
What discussion?
For discussion, why is this not a consent agenda item, being it's been voted on already?
Contract.
Okay.
We're awarding a contract.
A new one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fine.
Call a vote, please. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have a question, Mayor. Have we used this company in the past? This cleaning services?
No.
And were the company that we've been using in the past, was it any of these four?
Yes.
Okay, which company was that?
Kelly Janitorial.
Okay, and they came in higher than
They came in
were
lower.
low.
However, their services are not up to par.
Okay.
And
Okay.
We got references for the other company that we're hiring?
we did get references. Tammy Key called on references, yes.
And this was how much higher? Tammy, or the cost for this year, the budget for this year, or
It's
the
a valid
cost?
question.
Let me look.
It's not outside the budget that we budgeted.
No, I'm just wondering if it.
No, I'm asking.
So it comes within
No,
the budget.
it
It's
was
within the budget. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was
Okay.
going.
Is it within
That's
the
kind of where I
budget?
was going,
No.
Mayor, with it.
Let me look. Let me see if it was in there. I don't know if it
No,
was
because
included.
it's spread up over different.
Did she give you that answer later on?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Call the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Petrolanda?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Zapata?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Yes. We go to F.
This is just a request for council to approve the circle closure for the holiday car show on December 15th.
Motion to move item F.
Second.
Second.
Call the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Petrolanda?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Zapata?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Yes, we go to city attorney. Anything?
No, Mayor and Council, just thank you for your condolences. The loss of Gail Sirota at the firm was sudden, unexpected. It was a voting accident, so nobody was prepared for it. And the firm is reeling from it. Services will be on Wednesday, and then Joe and his family will be sitting Shiva for a number of days thereafter. But we're almost at 75 lawyers in 3 offices, but we're still very much like a small family. So a loss like this is really impactful. So thank you for your condolences.
Councilwoman Mitchell.
Just the only thing I wanted to mention is that the turkey trot right before the Saturday before Thanksgiving was wonderful. It was just fun to see everyone dressed up, and it's a great community event. And I wanted to thank the recreational, Parks and Rec Department for putting on a terrific fun event for the community.
Councilwoman Zapata.
Just want to share that I came back from Washington, D.C. and had the opportunity through a scholarship to attend and become a new member of NALEO, the National Association for Latino Elected Officials. And that was extremely rewarding. And
Congratulations.
so I represented Miami Springs there, and it was very nice.
Thank you. We go to Councilman Best.
No, good meeting.
Okay.
Happy belated Thanksgiving, everybody.
Councilman Petrolanga.
Don't forget the city manager.
I will.
Nothing.
He's saving the best for last.
Last time you forgot Bob.
Here
so
you go.
I got
Just helping you out, sir.
Tammy's got some events
Tammy, you
for
have
you.
some things to read off? Go ahead.
Yeah, we have the tree lighting ceremony this Saturday, December 1st at the Circle, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We have Santa's Parade Saturday, December 8th, starting at the City Hall at 5:45 p.m. We have Christmas at the Gazebo after the parade, the same day, December 8th, from 6 to 9 p.m. We have Polar Express Story Time on Saturday, December 15th at the Aquatic Center from 12 noon to 4 p.m. We have the Holiday Car Show at the Circle, Saturday, December 15th from 6 to 10 p.m. We have the art reception at City Hall, which will be December 10th from 7 to 9. And then we have the Board Gaming Society at the Community Center, Saturday, December 12th and December 15th. December 2nd and the 15th from 12 to 2. That's it.
Is that all you have?
Yes, sir.
Oh, jeez. Did you want to say something else, Councilman Best?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Councilman Woman brought up or somebody brought the turkey trot up. Judge Hill, Charles Hill, took second in his respective category. I'm not going to tell you what that was, but he took second. I thought that was
Did he
pretty.
start at the same place everybody else?
Yeah. Judge Hill. Good for Charlie. Just
Okay.
wanted to mention that.
Good. I just have to remember that the Optimist Club is selling their annual tree lot. They're selling trees. They're going fast. I don't know how long they're going to have them, but they're really being very successful. And I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Our condolences to your firm.
Yes, Danny.
This meeting's adjourned. Who did that? Oh.
Why?
Jamie, you did?
Oh, come here.
Little drum roll?
Yeah. Was I not supposed to? Hey, Billy.